Could you see at that stage though how big the internet was going to be?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, you could see that it was a massive game changer. Like, I mean, I remember even getting my first, I would be an Apple person, so getting my first, like my iMac, and it had the modem internally, it was like just this amazing thing. And before that, I had been cycling down with my copy on floppy disk to the Tribune. It just, you could see the change suddenly. Even the couple of publications that started having one seat where they could download content if you sent it via the internet. So you could see it was going to be massive, and we were writing about it and talking to all the early guys. So like, and traveling to the States and traveling to the Nordies, to see what's going on. As I say, the mobile phone was also really changing how people thought about technology. So Get Connected was about the internet, and probably about mobile technology as well.
So, Anne O'D, thank you very much for joining me.
Not at all. It's lovely to be here.
Could we start with Silicon Republic? I think a lot of people are going to be familiar with it, but maybe not so much as a business and kind of what's in behind it. So maybe could you kind of talk through about the business of Silicon Republic, how you make money, and all the kind of boring stuff, I suppose, first.
Okay, we'll get that out of the way. So Silicon Republic, we're going a hell of a long time. So we're 25 years, I think. In October, we're going to be going 25 years. So a little bit unusual for an online publication. So when we started out, really nobody was online. It was only the techies that were online, and that's why we decided to go online with Silicon Republic, which is a story in itself, because none of the agencies or the advertisers were going to pay for online content, even though it was the best tech content in Ireland, I would argue. It has been a ride up and down, yourself, entrepreneurship, at the best highs and the worst lows. You'll have heard it from all the people you've interviewed. Um, I think I mentioned to you, last year was a tough year. So 2025, the first half of 2025, there was so much uncertainty. So, a lot of our clients, and I'll explain to you now how that works, but a lot of them would have been holding their powder dry and going, oh, we won't make any decisions. Now that's really tough on a business our size, because we do rely on the big blue chip clients, to pay for advertising, sponsorship, partnership, you name it. The model, we do have a subscription, but it's really only for power users. So, we would have readers that read like every single thing we write, they pay. But really, it takes a while to reach the paywall. So a lot of people would read our content for free, which is a little bit unusual these days. But that is the idea. We're trying to get the content to as many people as possible. And therefore, our model is much more about the big blue chip companies in particular, paying for advertising to sponsor projects, etc. To ensure that they get in front of our niche audience. So Silicon Republic is very niche. It's very much born in Ireland, has an Irish accent, but looking out at the world. So, what we try to do, we're a relatively small team. We can't cover everything in technology, but because we've been doing this for 25 years, what we try to do is almost curate the news and ensure that our readers are getting anything that's actually important. And really all the noise we try and ignore as much as possible. But the idea is that if you read we do a daily newsletter. The idea, for example, is if you start your day on that, you have everything you need to know in the industry. So like, our readers are everybody in the big tech companies, the multinationals, startup communities, huge. Obviously, we've been covering startups like before they were even called startups, practically, before it was fashionable. So yeah, so the business model is that we rely on the the big blue chip companies to pay.
For advertising, yeah. And it's interesting, as you were talking about your kind of difficult year last year, I was reminded, I spoke to Maurice Pratt on this podcast former CEO of Tesco Ireland and CNC. Yeah, yeah. And I tell you, you seemed like you knew. I just was making sure, for the audience,
I have a great age, you see. I was around. I remember the ads with Morris Pratt when I was a kid.
But he was a marketing person, and he came to it. He was talking about how the first thing in a recession that large companies seem to drop is their advertising, and he said it's the worst thing you can do. But for some reason, it still happens, and it's almost that the lessons don't seem to have been learned, even at the stage that some of these companies are at.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, we're still here. And one of the reasons we're still here is that there are a lot of people who still would subscribe to that. So our very loyal, long-time clients stuck with us. It was just that they were a little bit slower making the decisions. So, for cash flow, like a couple of months difference when you're expecting a large client coming in can make a huge difference. It affects everything from, the payroll at the end of the month, keeps you awake at night going, are we definitely going to be okay? Which is amazing. After 25 years, we were still facing months like that, but we do from time to time,
How did you start the business? You mentioned there about going digital because that's kind of where the techies were. But it seems maybe in hindsight only that it's just an incredible business decision. So how did it all kind of come about, and why did you start the business?
So I lived abroad for years, and I kind of fell straight after school, and then I went back to university and then went abroad again, and I kind of fell into journalism and English language journalism. So, there were a lot of kind of local magazines who wanted, somebody who could speak good English and write good English. So when I came back to Ireland, then I got into really freelance journalism was where I wanted to be. I liked my independence. I did not want to be sitting in a news office, And I don't know whether you know many media people, but news offices are not very glamorous places a lot of the time. But anyway, I wanted to be independent. I always did. I would have always had the entrepreneurial gene. So, freelance journalism, in a way, there's something quite entrepreneurial about it as well. I was writing about business, marketing, property, whatever people would pay me for. And then suddenly technology started to really take off, and I found it absolutely fascinating. And I could see it was the future of everything. You think about it, like Google and all these people didn't exist when we started, but you could see, and in Ireland, it was Intel, Microsoft, IBM. They were the tech companies. And as I say, Google, Facebook, etc., didn't even exist. But it was just mobile was coming in, and it was just starting to get really interesting. So myself and my co-founder subsequently of Silicon Republic, pre-Silicon Republic, started doing, he would have been more on the commercial side. He would have worked on the Business Post back in the day, and I was the journalist. And we started doing supplements for the newspapers because they didn't really have tech journalists. It was a really new area. So we did a thing called Get Connected. And again, I'm showing my great age here. And it was to teach people how to get on the internet. Now, that gives you an idea how long ago
What year
we're
would that have been?
talking.
Kind of 98 or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, earlier. I'm just trying to think because Silicon Republic was founded in 2001. So, yeah, you're right. The supplements would have probably been, they were in our heads in 97, but going live in 98.
Because I tend to forget, right? But I remember doing my first school project, and I was obsessed with this rave band when I was 10 for some reason. The Prodigy, right? UK rave band.
I love the Prodigy.
Okay,
Prodigy are
great.
awesome.
Oh, good. Yeah. So I was obsessed with them when I was 10. Less so now.
Got you great taste for a 10-year-old.
Well, I don't know where it came from, but they had become popular at that stage. They were in the charts, and they were they just looked so different, and that appealed to me. But I did my school project, and I remember
not on
a
the
neighbor
Prodigy.
of ours. Yeah. It was about, I can't remember why, but I was like, I'm doing mine on the Prodigy. It was probably something, they were probably like, why are you doing this? But
I'd say it's possible.
yeah. And we had a neighbor on the road that had access to the internet. So this was 1998, and I remember going down and asking, could they find me information on the Prodigy? And the page would load, so it had that dial-up
The sound
sound.
of the modem.
Exactly,
Yeah, no, I
which
remember it
it's almost
well.
like music
Yeah.
now to people who remember it. And it would take ages to load. It was like really expensive. My neighbor's dad was costing him a fortune. But it really was like, how do you do this? We don't know how to get on.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they didn't know which sites. And I remember Kenny's bookshop going online. I mean, they were, ahead of Amazon. Like, I mean, they were amazing. And writing up all these, website reviews. Whereas now, I mean, you'd be wasting your time trying to do things like that.
Could you see at that stage though how big the internet was going to be?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, you could see that it was a massive game changer. Like, I mean, I remember even getting my first, I would be an Apple person, so getting my first, like my iMac, and it had the modem internally, it was like just this amazing thing. And before that, I had been cycling down with my copy on floppy disk to the Tribune, it just, you could see the change suddenly. Even the couple of publications that started having one seat where they could download content if you sent it via the internet, so you could see it was going to be massive. And we were writing about it and talking to all the early guys, so like, and traveling to the States and traveling to the Nordies, to see what's going on. As I say, the mobile phone was also really changing how people thought about technology. So Get Connected was about the internet, and probably about mobile technology as well.
So you were writing articles. When did the conversation start about maybe we should have our own online publication?
Well, we were doing those supplements. It was already like a small business, if you know what I mean. I think we were called IT News and Media at the time. But it was sitting working on the supplements and everything. We always knew we wanted our own. Myself and my co-founder Darren, I should mention here. We knew we wanted our our own business and to be independent, and we knew it was like such an exciting sector. So yeah, we came up with the idea of an online news site, and then it became Silicon Republic. At the time, people didn't talk hugely about Silicon Valley yet in Ireland, but we did, of course, given what we did. So yeah, it became Silicon Republic. Like,
And what was the first? So I just think it's so much easier to I mean, even AI would maybe create an online publication for us, over the last couple of years. Back then, there must have been a huge technical part to kind of building it, plus then the business side. And how, I'm kind of wondering, how was that balanced at the beginning?
yeah, I mean, one thing I would say, anybody listening to this who you may be somebody younger who's thinking of entrepreneurship, and that I'm a massive believer in having a co-founder. It can be quite a lonely place starting your own business. Darren was very strong commercially and very capable of sitting in front of just about anyone and making the case. I would have been a little bit more on the creative side, on the journalistic side. Now that has changed a lot over the years. Although my first passion would still be content, and really good content. But we knew that the only people who were really using the internet for news were the people who were passionate about technology. So it became a no-brainer really for us that we should start it. Then we would have brought in developers. We would have been up all night looking at versions of the site, changing it. We wanted it to look a bit like a newspaper, because in those days, that's what people were used to reading their news on. So we wanted it to be the technology newspaper. That all had to go into the design and everything. But then, like, each layer behind the website and what happens when you click here was down to us almost. We had great developers, but you still had to make all the decisions. So it was a massive, massive project, and probably took us a year. Like, we went live in 2001, but we were working on it like probably back end of 1999.
And did you have the feeling that it was going to, the kind of the readership, say, of the publication was going to grow, that people were going to move away from maybe kind of print publication? Like, that process happened very slowly, really, but everyone is online now. Did you feel that was going to be the same? Or, because the audience when you started must have been small but growing.
50,000 was our kind of our first, milestone was to get 50,000 readers, which was huge at the time, by the way, online. Like, you didn't, for a small Irish website. But yeah, and it almost reached saturation there. But then it started to grow, and we did know that it was going to. We felt that we did feel this was the future, like, and we we were right, but we weren't the only ones. Now, I'm not saying, but we did feel the audience would continue to grow as people got more technical. We felt that it was going to affect every business. Technology and the internet and how it was changing was going to go way beyond tech companies and get into every business is a technology company in some ways these days. But even then, they were going to have to move that way. But it was a bit slow. Yeah, it was slow enough.
And the readers at that time, did they kind of morph? So were the first 10,000, say, really technical people, and the next were less so?
Yes, I mean, we always tried to be a news site rather than a technical site. Like, there were people like, if you were talking to people of my age in the tech industry, they'd remember him. John Stern used to do, and I used to write for it actually. Back in the day, he used to have very techie easing very early on. And it was brilliant, but it was for the techies, the pure technical people, the IT people. Whereas we were trying to create something a bit more accessible that business people who were interested in technology, it would mean something to them. So we weren't getting down into the weeds of the technology. It was the business of technology and how it was going to change everything you did.
Can you remember who the first client was, or clients, and the kind of sales pitch?
I would think very early on, Intel. Intel loved what we were doing, and we had a few great champions in there, and they would have given us some support very early on. So I hope I'm right there, but I would say they were definitely one of the earliest. Yeah.
So it would have been still, it was always kind of maybe blue chip type of companies that you went after.
Yeah, like we never went down, and this goes for later as well. And some people thought we were mad, but we never went down the programmatic advertising side. It was always contextual. So it was, if you're reading Silicon Republic, this ad or this brand is probably going to interest you. So that the ads are part of the content almost. So like, you are not going to, even to this day, you're not going to go onto Silicon Republic and see an ad for, I don't know, a diet pill or something. I mean, I find it kind of almost disturbing these days, some of the sites you go onto, and it's actually quite hard to read the content. The content has lost primacy of place. You know what I mean? I find that a bit sad.
Tell me, Anne, a little bit about sort of the balance between journalistic integrity, say, and the business. Because if I think about the kind of global players that have grown, maybe Business Insider, say, they've kind of gone down a route of clickbait. They're more tabloidy, and when you compare it to the content that's on Silicon Republic, and you being a journalist, like, you can clearly see a difference in values. Was that difficult at any stage to say, we're not going to get into maybe this? It's an easy way to make money, maybe, but I want to still do this.
Yeah, I mean, like, most definitely. Yeah, most definitely. We went through a phase where we were under huge pressure to, everybody was going through, clicks, and, it was how many eyeballs. We were trying to stay very strong on the fact that, no, what you want is 10,000 eyeballs on your story that it matters to and read it to the end, or do you want 100,000 and they just opened it and closed it again because it's irrelevant to them? We did go through a phase where we didn't go quite clickbaity, but we added sort of elements like, memes, and top 10 memes of the month and stuff like that. It wouldn't have been my thing now, I'll be honest, but I kind of let myself be convinced. So our traffic flew, but we knew it wasn't. We were always interested in quality traffic, and our clients understand that it's not about, it's not like the general media where you've loads of people who really are very irrelevant. They want to reach their target audiences, and that is the beauty of a niche publication, and it's why we're still here. Because general media is taking quite a hammering. It's hard, It's a very difficult media market out there. I'm sure you've read about the media recession, and you'll have seen, like, Washington Post let go all their a load of journalists last week, including like all their main technology terms.
Yeah. Could we talk actually a little bit about that and just how you see things kind of developing there over time? Because um, it's very interesting because it seems to me that the publications that are doing well, you mentioned the Washington Post, but that have been maybe bought by very successful business people to use as a platform, or maybe to use for less than reputable reasons. But talk to me a little bit about that and how you see things at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I find it really hard because I'm a real media person. I adore media. I think the role of media is crucial. Like we're very not tabloidy. We don't pretend to be investigative journalists. We've never pretended to be that. What we are is about sharing intelligence so that you have a really good understanding of what's going on in your industry. And by the way, over the years that has extended to life sciences and research and science because technology is so much wider than it used to be. Yeah, it's been very tough, and we've seen a lot of our competitors go. And you saw like the next web went, and people think, people will often say to me, "Oh, that must be really good for you," but you don't. I don't get any joy out of that at all. There was room for all of us, in my opinion, and I find it absolutely tragic when I see publications go. Um, it's got it's incredibly expensive media, because it is human focused. And I know, you mentioned it earlier, lots of people will talk about AI, and we'll have to get into that without question. But to me, even if you look at our AI policy, it's on the site on Silicon Republic. We purposely made it public. We believe in human first journalism. So, I have a concern about AI that it goes in, takes information, but as the years go on, AI is taking AI created information, and you end up in this, you can end up with a lot of slop and a lot of inaccuracy. I see it at the top of the searches. I see inaccuracies that I'm aware of. So it's a slightly frightening time for media, I'll be honest. I think the ones who will survive are the people who retain the quality. I really do. I think the people who go down the tabloidy front, and you mentioned somebody in particular there, but I mean, there are many others. I think really you'll be able to get that information at the top of your Google search, that basic information, the tabloidy information. It's very easy to get gossip through AI. Um, it's very hard to get real information, well, what happened yesterday, what actually happened, and what does this journalist who's been working on this area for years think is the key part of that story? I mean, you just can't get that with AI. No matter, I know, I'm not anti AI. Don't misunderstand me. But we use AI in the company, just not for our content.
I think even now there's so much on LinkedIn, for example. You can tell when something has been written by AI straight away. You can just, and it's just, I think it's a natural humanistic thing to say this has been written by a computer. It's now uninteresting because it actually doesn't. And when I see it, sometimes I'm like, why is this person written this with AI? Because they're actually saying something that's quite heartfelt. I saw something today about someone, they were talking about a friend of theirs who had become ill, and you could see that it was done with AI because of the double dash and stuff. And I just thought, why would you do so? It's almost, it kind of cheapens the whole thing, really.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people feel that way. And I mean, you have to have a certain sophistication to recognize AI. We would all recognize AI writing a mile away. Some people don't, And if you look at the figures, a lot of general reading now, people aren't clicking through to websites. They're reading the stuff at the top of the search. It's a little bit frightening, I think, because it is a little bit, I fear, dumbing down. It is also really tough for media. Now, it hasn't affected us hugely. Our traffic is actually growing when like so many online media brands aren't. So we would have taken a hit when GDPR came in originally, which is another conversation. Um, but we're back now on growth, which is fantastic. And I think that is because people go, I know there's a human hand in here. I know there's judgment here. I know this has been curated to tell me what do I need to know for my job today, you know. So you'll see the majority of the reading time in Silicon Republic is during the workday. You're never going to get shot for having Silicon Republic open on your work desk. You know, it's part of your work. Um, so it is quite a serious publication from that point of view, in that like it is actually really important that it be accurate. Um, and we give our journalists an awful hard time about take that tabloidy word out. Like I don't care, you know, how good the headline is. The headline should say what the story is about, not. And of course, people are now, a couple of the media houses are now using AI for headlines and things like that. We're still not doing that. I still don't believe in it.
Talk to me about entrepreneurship. You mentioned earlier that there's plenty of ups and downs, and even still, it might be surprising to people if they don't have any experience with it to hear that those downs still happen now. You know, you talked about having a tough year last year and, you know, worrying, you know, being up at night worrying about payroll, that those things, and the more and more people I ask this question to, I don't think anyone has said to me, oh, you eventually arrive and then everything is fine from that. You know, it could take time, but you arrive. Could you talk to me a little bit about some of the downs, and kind of what keeps you going through those periods?
Yeah, there would have been plenty over the years. The big one that would have hit us really hard was the 2008 recession. You know, the big financial crash. I mean, that affected all business, but my goodness, it affected advertising massively. That was really tough. We had some serious soul searching to do in those years. And a big learning from that for me was we were probably too independent. We should have been in a stronger place before a big shock hit, because there's always going to be big shocks. We had COVID since then. If you think about it, you know, there's always going to be big external shocks, and you have to try and have yourself in a place where you can withstand them, you know, and we weren't. So we should probably have taken investment on before then. We should probably have reached out for help, you know, before then, but we were so fiercely independent, that the very first investment we got into the company, sorry, the only investment to date, from the outside was, yeah, a couple of years after the recession, when it was a case of, if we don't get investment in now, we're not going to be here. So that was tough. There were some really tough days, and you're putting your own personal money in the whole time, and you're going, am I going to come out of this with zero? You know, you don't get into media to be a multimillionaire, I need to tell you. And we knew that at the time, and we got into it out of passion. And we had a business sense as well, don't get me wrong, but we knew that there were better ways to make money. You know, we could see, you know, other people starting up companies, and we were going, yeah, that's going to work. Um, the COVID was interesting as well. Um, but I have to say we were very lucky that we're based in Ireland, because, you know, it's very easy to slag off our governments, and they're very far from perfect. But they did a very good job during COVID keeping small businesses going. You know, all the supports were there, you know, the VAT warehousing, stuff like that. So we went from going, oh my God, we're in trouble now, to going, oh my goodness, there's actually help there, you know, and quick as well, which was really surprised me. Like, they got revenue involved and stuff like that. So you could get help really quickly, which saved, I mean, I would say thousands of smaller businesses in Ireland, you know.
And thousands and thousands of jobs really at that time.
Thousands of
Yeah.
jobs. Absolutely. We were able to keep all our staff, like, for example, through COVID, you know. And we went fully remote, and we've stayed fully remote, which is another conversation. But yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship is really hard. Like, it is fabulous to work for yourself, to be able to follow your own vision, to be able to implement your own vision, to be able to bring fabulous teams with you. And we've absolutely fabulous teams over the years in Silicon Republic, and a wonderful team at the moment. Um, I mean, that's a huge privilege. So to me, it's worth it. But there are moments where you're going, am I completely mad? Like, I've turned down, I've been headhunted for all sorts of CEO jobs over the years and things like that, where I could have earned twice the money and not ever worried about anybody else's salary or anything like that. But gosh, no regrets, I have to say. No, I wouldn't change it now.
It is that sense of, I suppose everyone likes to make money, right? But in a lot of ways, um, the people that I sit across from here that have a sense of purpose in what they're doing, they're not just doing it for money. They can, they've just gotten through those difficult times because they're more purposeful about what they do, and that can come after or before, but it seems to drive people a lot more.
Yeah, I think it surprises people sometimes, because some of the most successful people you see in the world can be horribly toxic with no purpose, clearly. I don't even have to mention any names, they come to mind so quickly. But I think people are always surprised the number of people who are in business. That business is not necessarily an evil thing, that the number of people who are in business who really have purpose, who I've met many of them over the years, and I'm always pleasantly surprised, people who really believe in what they're doing and believe that they can be a force for good in the world. Um, did you hear my Kerry accent coming out there? I told you I was born and bred in Kerry. It comes back every so often, even though I'm gone a long time. But yeah, I don't know how people get out of bed in the morning when they don't have purpose in what they do. I really don't. And it's something we try and instill in the people we work with as well, to be proud of what they do, to get up and really want to do their best work. I think it's the most important thing in leadership, for example, is purpose. And I think all your team around you can see whether you have purpose or not, or whether you're just after the money. And some of the wealthiest people I know aren't particularly happy. So I mean, I've never been a great believer that money was the answer to it all. But I think money becomes important really. Its only importance for me is probably security. I think it's really tough on people when they don't have security, and whether it's entrepreneurs or whether it's people who are working for other people, that's tough. It's very easy to say money doesn't make you happy, but having no money can be pretty miserable as well. But it can't be I don't think can be your only purpose, to be a whole human being and an entrepreneur. In my view, I think your job would be grim if it was all about the money, personally.
What about hiring people? So you mentioned there the great team that you have, but people, it's very difficult, right? Managing people, and I suppose getting them on the same page, or it can be. What challenges have you had there over the years, and how have you kind of overcome those?
Gosh, we joke about it sometimes. We had a fellow director years ago in at the company who used to say, "Oh, the next business I start is going to be robots." Now, as it turns out, actually, he was right. There's plenty of businesses working beautifully with robots, but I think it's one of the joys of business is working with other human beings. They can drive you nuts at times. I think recruitment is really important. You can still make mistakes. I learned so much over the years. I made so many mistakes in the people I would have hired over the years. You learn. And that it's very hard to give advice to people because it's something that comes with time, really, recruitment. But I think recruiting with an open mind is crucial, and I think we've always done that. So it mightn't always be the obvious hire. Somebody on paper can look perfection, but you know, I can't remember the Peter Drucker quote about culture, but um, culture is really important as well, and people who have values and have that purpose as well. Because if you have, for example, a bunch of journalists who don't have your values and your ethics, well, then you're going to be constantly pulling back content to go, we're not publishing that, or no, please, no, that's not who we are. Whereas if you manage to recruit people with your ethics and standards and values, then they kind of just intuitively learn what the job is, and you're never fighting with them. So we've had very little trouble in the last 10 years. Whereas like in the first 10 years, it would have been, oh my God, we had all sorts of mad people come in and out of the company and I was going like, how did we miss that? Like that was just so wrong for us. So I believe it comes with time. I think it's a real learning process. And then I think when your people are on board, a big thing for me, and people will probably go, oh yeah, well, woman CEO, of course, they're so empathetic and everything. But I think treating people like human beings and being firm, absolutely, but kind. Like there's just no excuse for people going home in tears and things like that, and which I'm well aware of people over the years in other organizations, is like, you're going to get your best work from people if they're happy. No, it's not, you can't, their lives are outside work as well. You're not going to make them happy, but like, they shouldn't be miserable at work. They should look forward to going into work in the morning, I think that's how you get the best work out of people. It might sound naive, but I believe it firmly. I really do.
Do you think having a journalistic background is helpful to this process of growing a business? And I'll explain what I mean. I'm an accountant and I come from a finance background where everything is very much numbers, process, formats. You put in one thing and it comes out the other end, and there's a right and wrong, and there's very clear lines around it. And it's a bit dry because there's no real you can get creative with numbers, right? But there's no real creativity there. And the intangible is there's less intangible to it. So when I learn about kind of the most successful businesses, are the businesses that have been able to grow, they do talk about implementation of values, and just more intangible things generally. And I think coming from a journalistic background, that stuff is kind of ingrained, because you do have that choice of whether I'm going to go, tabloid, or whether I'm going to go broadsheet. There are those decisions that you make early and that you probably learn during training and things like that. So I'm just interested to hear your opinion. Do you think it's a kind of good training for that part of the business?
It is, but in a funny way, the finance is really useful as well. And in a way, the creativity is hugely important, but I could probably have done with having more of a background in the other as well. If you could have the combination of both, it would be perfect. And that's why I think, for me, the best companies don't have like one really strong personality at the top and that's it. Like, for me, the best companies have at least two founders, and often more, that are very different. So we would have butted heads, myself and my co-founder Darren, like in the early days. Oh my goodness, like the arguments and the fights and all the rest of it, because I was all about the creativity and the quality and he was all about but the business has to work, and this is the commercial model, and this is and he was absolutely right and I was absolutely right. But it was that combination. What came out the other end, if you like, of all those sleepless nights and long discussions was the right thing. So I'm a huge believer in that a company needs the creative side and the commercial side. You need both, and it rubs off on the founders as well. So Darren would be so much more like me these days. I would be so much more like Darren these days. We've learned to share the creativity and the commercial now over the years. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. And have you ever kind of committed that to paper in order to get clarity? Or paper, it might have been, a Word doc or whatever.
Oh, I know what you mean by paper. Yeah,
Have you?
paper.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Have you been intentional about it? Is really what I'm asking.
Oh yeah, no, we would have been absolutely, and we still are. You have to. I mean, you're not going to have a business at the end of it if you don't. So, I mean, a huge amount of what you do is brainstorming the financial model with the creative model. Like, what do people want to read, and what are your clients willing to pay for, and trying to find that fine line down the middle. Where you keep the integrity, you keep your values, but you have something to sell, sadly, as well, because otherwise journalism will die.
But what about the other side of success, maybe in journalism? And I'm talking specifically, so we talked about money, but I'm kind of thinking about your platform and your respect as a journalist, and I'll use the word fame, but I suppose you're not a celebrity, but you would be known certainly in a reasonably large group of people at this stage. Has that ever been a driver for you, or something that has kind of helped you stay within what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a great question, I have to say. It's a funny one because I think I've mentioned this to you before. I by nature I like to give platforms to other people. So for me it's all about the brilliance of Silicon Republic will always be the brilliance of the people that will come and speak to us and share their knowledge with us and share the intelligence with us. But it's a brand also. So somebody has to be out front representing it. So I'm very mindful of the fact that I can't do what I'd like to do, which is just sit in my room and get on with work, which is much more what I am by nature. I need to get out there and represent the brand as well. It's really, really important. It's finding that fine line as well, like because you want your team members to be getting that recognition as well. You know, it's very easy. Like people constantly will ask me about me, you know, and I'm going, yeah, but this is just a small part of Silicon Republic is me. Yes, I'm out front a lot, but I mean, the team is what it's all about. Like, I mean, literally what it's all about. And we have some remarkable people and people who've been so loyal over the years as well. I mean, you know, there's loads of content jobs in the big multinationals. You can go and earn 3 times as much somewhere else. So if people stay, they stay because they believe in the organization and you know, we're a little bit like a family now. I don't want to be too facetious about that, but like we all really like each other and get on and listen to each other and allow for each other's errors. And, you know, I think that's kind of crucial. So it's just, I think it's very, I don't think there's much danger of me letting my ego take over. It's not really who I am, but I do recognize for years I did not put myself forward. And then people were kind of going, who runs Silicon Republic and who's Silicon Republic anyway? So it was when that started happening, I started saying, okay, yes, I'll go. And I used to run events and I used to get other people in to chair them, things like that. And then one day I just went, okay, this is getting silly now. I'm just going to have to get over it because I would have been terribly shy in the early years. I just have to get over myself now and get out there. And
Have you grown to enjoy the limelight a little bit?
not so much the limelight, I'd say, as I love getting out there and meeting people. And I didn't realize I did, I have to say. I kind of forced myself to do it. And now I love it. Like, I love going out and chairing an event or emceeing an event. And because it's all content as well, you know. I like going out and emceeing a good event, though. That's the big difference. I mean, there's lots of events that are, you know, I don't want to be too insulting, but that are, you know, for all the world sales pitches on stage. I have no interest in that. But I'm very lucky I get invited. It's such an exciting sector. I do pick and choose, but I do get invited to chair. Like I just chaired an event on, you know, with the European Space Agency down in Mullingar, and it was so interesting. You know, it was just fabulous down in IMR. So yeah, you can probably tell I still love it. Yeah.
Yeah, talk to me about AI. I just talked a little bit about it, but given that you're at the forefront of this and there's so much change happening in AI, and you know, sometimes if I'm not, I just feel if I'm not actually reading about it every day, that all of a sudden or playing with this or whatever it might be, I'm already months behind, you know, in a couple of weeks. What's happening and what do you see happening over the next while?
My goodness, it is so hard. It is mind blowing, the changes. I mean, there is no getting away from it. I think there are some industries that are at much bigger risk than others. But I also think in a funny way, you know, the system we have in the world pushes so hard on productivity that I think it was, how can I put this? But I think we'd all gone mad and people, corporations and organizations were expecting people to, pre-COVID, I would almost say, to just devote their entire lives to their organizations and things like that. I think COVID was a wake-up call for a lot of, including a lot of very senior people who quite liked bringing their kids to school all of a sudden, who had never done it in their lives and, you know, quite liked actually spending a bit more time with their family and things like that. I think some priorities changed there. But I think in a funny way, I think AI might, this is a very optimistic view, but I think it might allow people to get rid of the mundane. Other people say this isn't rocket science, but, you know, get rid of some of the mundane things they do and actually do more creative work. So what I'm hoping is you'll end up with better organizations, better businesses, and a lot of the really boring stuff being done by AI. I think you have to be really careful with AI when it comes to the really important stuff. I think there are massive security issues. I mean, there have been stories in recent times about AIs going in and searching people's emails and things like that without mentioning any names. But it's just huge, but it is going to transform everything, in my view. It really is going to transform how we work. Um, I think it's hugely risky that there are about 3 companies that believe that they own AI and that they control it. I think the decentralization is going to be absolutely crucial. I worry about people saying, "Oh, I'll go and do this course with OpenAI or with Anthropic," and you're going, "Hang on a sec, that's not a course on AI. That's a course on a specific company's AI, and of course they're going to sponsor it and be happy for you to do it." I think people are going to have to be very selective and really think about how they use AI and use it for the right reasons and not just use it for the lazy reasons, which I see happening a lot at the moment. I think communications is crucial in everything, whether it's an NGO or whether it's a for-profit corporation. And I think handing your communications over to AI is a big mistake. In my personal view, I think people are going to have to be really cautious around that.
Do you feel so? Your business started kind of at the dawn of the internet, really. Like when you look back, like it seemed like there was a lot happening at the time, but when you just see what happened in the 20 years subsequently, it's just incredible what's happened with the internet. Is AI the biggest thing since then in your view?
There's probably something in the middle, which was social media, was huge. I think social media changed a lot for the bad and a lot for the good. The world also. So I think people sometimes forget that because people see social media as a kind of a generalist sort of thing. But it changed how people did business as well, hugely. I think AI probably is the biggest thing since the internet. I mean, I think there's no getting away from it. I mean, you have literally, like, you look at Claude Code, and the last version of Claude Code was written by Claude Code. Like, we are at a stage where yeah, it is world changing. There's no doubt about it. I think the social media example is really an important one because we messed up with social media and we didn't put in the guardrails, and it became really toxic and created loads of problems because the regulations weren't there early enough because people didn't understand the significance. I'm I would be quite pro regulation. I might be a little bit unusual in that way. I don't agree. People talk about regulation stifling innovation. I think the main voices saying that are very self-interested. Obviously, it's easier not to have any regulation, of course, if you're in business, much easier not to. But if we make the mistake of not regulating AI, I think we'll really regret it. I really do. And I do think the EU, with all its failings, I think the AI Act is really important. And I mean, look at the recent Grok, fiasco. Like, I mean, a scandal. I mean, if there weren't regulations and there weren't laws, Grok would still be doing what it was doing. It's just,
And it's clearly disgraceful. Like that was, it was just so obvious about how negative that whole situation was, that it's almost incredible to think that some people, you know, whatever, Elon Musk was self-interested, but so other people actually agreed that there should be no regulation on that. It was just a crazy idea in my
yeah,
mind.
it is. It does come back, doesn't it, to the Trump factor, though, that suddenly everything was allowable. You could say what you wanted, you could do what you wanted, and really you weren't going to have to pay for it anymore. Like, if you think of some of the things people say and do now, 10 years ago, they would have been out of business. They would have been fired. They would have been removed as CEO. It's all changed, hasn't it? It's all changed, and particularly in the US, where a lot of tech is driven from. I think it's a real wake up call for Europe and the rest of the world, to set their own standards and not give in too much to the money man, to the I think it's important to speak truth to power. And I think Europe is trying to do it. I think it's very hard with 27 different voices. So I think they've done a relatively good job. I think what they've done brilliantly with things like the EU Act, the AI Act, and with the various kind of supplementary parts of it, is they've gone out and talked to industry and academics, and not just the lobby groups, but right down to the people, the technologists and the academics who understand how AI works. So that would never happen in the US. It just wouldn't. So yeah, I have great faith in what Europe is attempting to do there, and I think the guardrails are really important. If they're not there, people aren't going to stop something like rock out of the goodness of their heart. They're going to stop something like rock because they see it as a threat to their business. It's like, oh, okay, we're in trouble. We're going to get fined here. We're going to be banned here. That's the only reason they made the change. The only reason was the regulation and the laws.
It must be difficult to be a technology journalist. And the way I think about it is, technology is kind of layered over every single aspect of things you can think about. So something might come out for, say, agriculture, and then the technology journalist has to understand agriculture, or digital currencies, right? Well, how does the money system work, and how is this going to change money? If I don't understand how the world works in kind of a lot of aspects, it's kind of hard to understand what technology will do. Has that been a challenge for you over time?
Yeah, that comes back to recruiting as well. You need to recruit people with really curious minds. I mean, the best journalists are like really curious, really nosy, want to know more. I mean, certainly I would be like that anyway. So maybe I'm using myself as an example. But yeah, there are people who read the news, who care about the news, who care what's going on in the world. Sometimes care too much, and you have to say, no, that's not the kind of publication we are. We get opinion from other people. It's not really about our opinion. Yes, it's hard to follow everything, but we live, eat, and breathe it while we're working. So, like, if you think about it, our day is spent reading all that stuff, reading all the opinions, parsing it, talking to the experts. And this is something I always tell the team as well, is like, a journalist can never be an expert. Like, I would never pretend to be an expert in anything. I'll be perfectly honest. Nor an editor for that matter. You talk to the experts. So you get out there. If you're going, oh, what is going on with, I don't understand Sora 2. Okay, go and talk to somebody who does, somebody that you trust. So the huge background to a strong media company is its connections, its contacts, its knowledge base, its professor down in UCC, or its technologist over in Limerick, or its software expert that they've met over the years, and they can ask honestly. So, when you look at things like, you're looking at OpenClaw and open source AI agents, things like that. Like, the first thing I do is, like, I'm on the phone to developer friends and I'm going, okay, are you guys using this? I'm reading the develop. So what do you think about this, and what am I missing? So a lot of it isn't written down. A lot of what you learn isn't written down. It's research. Research is crucial for journalism.
Yeah, in preparation for this, I looked at your LinkedIn, and I was thinking, yeah, okay, well, here's the CV and everything. And then I said, well, I wonder, is she on Instagram? And I had a look at your personal Instagram, and I saw that your curiosities seem to be very wide ranging. So you mentioned the Prodigy earlier. Like, you seem to go to a lot of live music events. Art seems to be a big part of it. Some elements of horticulture are also an interest of yours. Tell me just a little bit about that, and this kind of broader interest that you have outside of just technology.
That's so funny. It never even struck me. People never look at my Instagram because I purposely, my Instagram is uniquely personal. So, exactly that. I put no work stuff on it, as you probably gathered. And it's the only reason I use it, because I'm not on Facebook or anything like that. And I gave up Twitter years ago because X is just toxic. Um, Actually, the reason I'm on this room is a great place to meet other people who are interested in horticulture and art and you name it. So yeah, well, I'm really impressed with your research. That's so funny.
Well,
Most
it
people,
didn't take much, you know. I just
I
looked
know,
it
but
up.
it's just most people don't know that side of me at all because I don't talk about it. But yeah, I'm a huge believer in the whole person is so much more than what they do for, for work. Um, and I would have always been passionate about art. It would have come from my family as well. I lived in Italy for a couple of years. We've compared notes at Italy before. If that doesn't make you passionate about art, I don't know what wouldn't, and architecture and you name it.
But also, you speak Italian, you speak French, do you speak any other languages?
I learned a bit of Spanish as well, but Italian and French. I lived in Italy and France for years, so I've held on to them. So yeah,
So it
I
is.
love the language.
There is a broad kind of interest level there, to rather than it's you've a niche publication, right, but not a niche focus in a lot of ways. Yeah, and I just thought it was interesting.
It is interesting. I'm a great believer in it, and you'll see it with a lot of our team are a bit the same as well. They've outside interests that are completely different, but that gives you a really important perspective. It means you're watching the rest of the world. It means you're interested in climate. It means you're interested in biodiversity. That feeds into your coverage of technology and science are crucial for areas like that. So, like, the link between biophilia and which I would count myself as a very strong proponent of biophilia, but the link between that and my work is not as far off as it might seem sometimes. But I also think it's just you'd go insane if your mind was only ever thinking about the day job. I think it's really important to have escapes and all of those things like veg growing and art and I do a bit of watercolor and things like that. I mean, they're a great escape as well.
And I think also, as you were mentioning there about the kind of connections, I read an incredible book about 2 years ago. I can't remember the exact title, but what I learned about investing from Darwin,
Oh
and
yes, I know the book.
it's an amazing book, and the analogies that he can pull from biology into investing, and I suppose in biology you get a lot of truth, right? In the sciences you get kind of what is the truth here, and what happens in these instances, and those kind of analogies are easily you can pull them over into other aspects like technology and things like that, and they seem to help our understanding.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's really important for entrepreneurs and for journalists to have another side to themselves for exactly those reasons. You can't be too. In fact, if you look at the people who I admire probably the least in the more toxic, the more toxic side of the tech industry, they are obsessed. Like it is an obsession, and they don't really have a life outside it. I think that, I think that focuses too much. I think it's unhealthy and I don't think it's good for any of us that they're that way, to be honest with you. So yeah, some of them could do it, maybe spending a bit of time in the garden.
Yeah, but I also I do you know Kevin Kelly from Wired magazine, and when I was reading about you, I kind of thought there's a lot of kind of I don't know, there was
I'm
something,
honoured, but
well, yeah, I mean it is a great honor maybe to be good to be compared, and but he seems to have a very broad he's a technologist and he's very interested in technology, but a lot of the things that are quite interesting about him, a lot of things he says, they're not actually very technological focused.
yeah, but that's it. And that's you're taking an overview in a way as a journalist or as a reporter or, even if you're writing an opinion piece, you have to take that overview. So it's really healthy to know history, to understand the world, to have you mentioned Darwin, but I mean, so natural history, it's all really important. It all absolutely fits into today because we talk about everything changing and everything being new, but in some ways things don't change at all. It's if and history teaches you that in a big way. Um, I'm watching on Netflix. What's it called? Death by Lightning. You haven't seen it,
I
no?
haven't seen it. No,
It's about
no.
one of the first American presidents to be assassinated, Garfield.
Okay.
It's just really interesting. The parallels with it's based on a true story, obviously, and it's just really interesting to see the parallels with today. So, you need a broad knowledge set if you're trying to change the world in any way, or even change your small corner of the world. I think being over specialized is a mistake.
Talk to me finally, okay? And I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been broad as we talked about, but there's been depth to it, and I've really learned a lot. So thank you very much for coming in. Finally, because it's here on my notes, and we haven't talked about it yet, and not quite sure if this is going to be the kind of best place to end, or where I would usually end the conversation, but women in business, and specifically women in STEM subjects. Where does that passion come from? Now, obviously, you are a woman in technology, so I understand that there's a personal side to this as well. But why is it important?
Oh my goodness, where do I start? It's just hugely important. I mean, there's so many different reasons, but some of the key ones, I suppose, are okay, if you think about it, science and technology is everything from medicine to climate to you name it. It's the future of the world. Science and technology is such a fundamental part of it. Now, if all the new products and services are being designed by only one part of the population, that's a problem. It's been a huge problem in medicine over the years. And now, I mean, now people never stop talking about menopause. Now it's gone to the other extreme. But, there were things over the years that you were going to male doctors and they hadn't been taught anything about women's health. They really hadn't. They were like a module of 5 minutes, and I use that as an extreme example. But if we're designing products and services, you know, you're going to build the bias in that one side of the population has. You need it to be created by a wide mix of diverse thinking, gender, background, demographic. You know what I mean? If you're building a company, you're the people at the end, the clients, they're all going to be that mix of people. They're going to be all those people. So if you're serving all of them, it ain't going to happen. So I think there's that reason. Also, it's just desperately unfair that some of the best careers in the world some young women seem to think that it's not accessible to them. So it was my idea would have always been to kind of to combat that sort of imposter syndrome. So I'm on the board of a charity called Teen Turn. I'm a board advisor on Teen Turn, and they get internships in technology companies from people from the sort of the DESH schools and the more impoverished areas of Ireland, I'll be honest with you. But not only. But it's just, again, these people wouldn't have parents that know people who could get them an internship in Google or in wherever. So it's just to make sure that we're opening up, not just for women, but for everybody, because that's where all the creativity and the new products and the amazing changes and the technology that's going to impact society. And I mean, look at all the floods in recent days. You want your best brains there. So that is where the passion came from, really, is that, like, why would you exclude half the population? Is lunacy when you're trying to find the best minds and different types of thinking. And women and men do think quite differently sometimes.
Absolutely. And I spoke to Darina from Neurodiversity Ireland, and she said it said something. It came from someone else, and I can't remember who at this stage. But it was essentially she had been watching something or reading something, and someone had said, the cure for cancer could come from a dyslexic mind. And if we're not sort of supporting people with dyslexia to get into cancer research or medicine, or because it's not as if just because they have difficulty with certain reading or whatever it might be, doesn't mean that they aren't kind of brilliant in different ways.
100%. I have members in my extended family who are dyslexic. Some of the most brilliant people I know, and nearly got missed in school because they didn't spot they were brilliant. It's a lovely line, that I love that. And it's exactly that. It's exactly that thinking, is you don't exclude anybody from the problem. It's really important that all the best minds, and the same goes for autism. And I just passed As I Am when I was walking down to you there, and the work that Adam does is incredible. It's just crucial, in technology, of course. Famously, you want that focused mind that often people who are on the spectrum are quite brilliant, at getting into the weeds of the technologies we're talking about. So, yeah, so I would have always been passionate not just about getting women into STEM, but also getting exactly getting that diverse thinking. So I used to run an event called Inspire Fest and Future Human, And we had like, and never tokenism, like, because I have a horror of lip service and tokenism, but like, we had like an incredible robotics designer who happened to be in a wheelchair. We had like an incredible software developer who happened to be blind. We were kind of maybe shoving it down people's throats a little bit, but we were just trying to really make the point that brilliant people can come from the most unexpected places. And what we all need if we're going to tackle is that mitigation of climate change at this stage now, rather than we've left it a bit late. But if we're going to tackle those huge issues, we need everybody to have access to the roles that are going to do that, you know?
Anody, it's been a pleasure having you in today, and I think it's actually, I sometimes say I think that's a fairly positive note to finish on. But I really feel at this point and I wasn't sure when I was saying, oh, do I feel like I want to end this interview about diversity rather than about you? But I really think it's a great point to finish on, and something for us all to think about. So thank you very much for coming in and for joining me on the podcast.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot.